So my first experience with the center was in 1989. I was in 1989. I was a sophomore. I was a 22-year-old sophomore in college. And when I came to school at Utah State University, I got acquainted with what was then known as the Developmental Center for Handicapped Persons, or DCHP. I came as an undergraduate working with Dr. Rich West. I was working in the Interdisciplinary Training Division. Within a year or two, it changed over to the Center for Persons with Disabilities, but I always had DCHP in my mind for many, many years. That's just what I knew it as. So I've been affiliated with this center, now the Institute, for well over 30 years. It's been a part of my growing up professionally and personally in many ways. When I first got into this disability stuff in the late 1980s, I wanted to be a special education teacher. We were still doing a lot of things for people. And I think over time we have learned that we need to be much better partners. I had an experience once. Over the years, I did a number of things here at the CPD, and one of them was to serve as the director of the Utah Assistive Technology Program, or UATP. Had a wonderful mentor, a woman, Helen Roth, who's some of the old timers might remember Helen. She was a tremendous advocate, and I remember writing something in a report that she saw, and I asked her to do some editing, and she saw this, and I said something about the work we're doing allows people with disabilities to do such and such. I got a phone call from her within a day or two, and she said something that has been transforming to me in my career. She said, what you do as a disability community, as a support community, is to enable us and people like me to do the things that we need to do. You don't allow me to do anything. You don't hold power over me. That's been probably 20, 25 years ago that we had that conversation. And I've seen the field change, that over time, that we are no longer doing things for people, but the field of disability studies, disability policy, disability training, all special education, we are working with people, alongside people, rather than for and on behalf of people. And I think there's a great power in that. We are truly a community supporting each other. I've seen that shift happen over time, and I think it's continuing to happen, and rightly so. The shift to going from working for people with disabilities to working with people with disabilities has had a tremendous impact, certainly in our research world. And I think the CPD was among the first in the country to be really taking to heart this idea of community-based participatory action research. You know, there are a lot of different ways to say that, but working with people to find out what they need, rather than just taking a grant application or a funding opportunity and saying, well, this is the work we're going to do, and we're going to find a few people in the community that might need this, and we're going to write a grant proposal, we're going to get funded, and we're going to change the world. I think that in my experience over the last 30 plus years, we are taking much more time to work with communities of families, of adults with disabilities, of people that we work with, people who will benefit from the kinds of things we do, and truly asking, what are the needs that you have? And then working together to develop solutions together, developing funding proposals together, developing research protocols together to meet the needs of the people who benefit the most, whether they be individuals with disabilities or their families or service providers or whoever our constituents might be. When I started at the Institute as an undergraduate, I was involved in a variety of different research projects, and went out and taught school for a couple of years, and then came back and worked on a teacher training program, worked on distance education. Then from there I worked on, that's going back a lot of years. I worked with Dr. Margaret Lubke, and we were doing compliance monitoring in the state of Washington and some in the state of Utah and Bureau of Indian Education, and working for special education systems. Then I ended up at the Utah Assistive Technology Program, and I worked there as an evaluator for a time, and then took over when Dr. Martel Menlove left, and was asked to serve as the director there, and did a variety of different projects and programs through UATP, and then the Interagency Outreach Training Initiative, IOTI. I haven't thought about these acronyms in a long, long time. From there, I was fortunate that I had great mentorship from Marv Fifield. Marv was a tremendous mentor and a tremendous friend in many, many ways. I had expressed interest to him about being more engaged in federal policy work. And he worked with what was then known as the American Association of University Affiliated Programs, or AAUAP, which we now know as the Association of University Centers on Disabilities, AUCD. They had a new director. They were starting their inaugural Disability Leadership Policy Fellowship program. And I was fortunate enough to have the support of Utah State University to serve as the first Disability Leadership Policy Fellow for AUCD. That was back in 2001. I did that for a year and worked in DC with the promise that I would come back to the center, which I did and agreed to stay. I served for a number of years as an assistant director for policy and development and helped the center. At that point, Sarah Rule was then the director, helping her develop relationships across the state and with our federal partners, and representing the center across the country with the more policy related folks. In fact, Cindy Rowland and I worked together to help plan and celebrate the 35th anniversary of the center then, and that doesn't seem like it was that long ago. Following that, then I went to work with John Copenhaver. I went to work with John Copenhaver at TACE, Technical Assistance for Excellence in Special Education, and the Mountain Plains Regional Resource Center. And I did that with him for almost 5 years. And all of that time together was almost 20 years, almost to the day, in my formal employment with the center, which is now the Institute. So I did a lot of different things. What I learned was be respectful, be kind, work hard, make sure that we are developing respectful relationships with people, meeting the needs of people where they are. That, I think, is probably the most important lesson I learned in my 20 years here. And I met and worked with just tremendous, wonderful people. And after I left the center in 2013, I went to work at the University of Montana. And there I served as the executive director of the Rural Institute for Inclusive Communities, which is Montana's version of the CPD. When an opportunity came up to be involved on more university level research at Idaho State University, I looked at it seriously. I thought, I want to do something different. I want to take the skills that I've learned in leadership, the skills that I've learned in developing relationships with people, and use them in a different way. The disability side of things will never go away. That will never, my attention to equity, my attention to diversity, my attention to inclusion, that will never stop. I'm just able to express those values and engage in activities that ensure those values or that promote those values on a university scale now at Idaho State. And so far, I could have never dreamed that I would have gone from a special ed teacher to a vice president for research. In fact, many people scratch their heads when they say, now where did you start and what? Many people in my position are chemists, or they are, they're hard scientists. A social scientist is rare in my position, and especially someone who is a school teacher and a special ed teacher. But everything I learned from that experience up till now is serving me well. I grew up, this is where I get emotional. I grew up here. And everything good, and I said this earlier, everything good that's happened to me professionally is because of my experience here, the people that I worked with, my mentors, my friends, the people who took me under their wing and have helped me move along professionally. And personally, some of my very best friends are here. And so much of good in my life is from the Center for Persons with Disabilities. And I am ever so grateful to be a part of this, this legacy of 50 years what a great opportunity for me, for my family. I'm so fortunate to have had this experience. And I just really hope and wish that others would have this type of experience. I can't imagine my life without the opportunities that I've had here and the doors open. I just can't imagine what my life would have been without it. So I'm happy and excited that the Institute has had 50 wonderful years, and I hope they have another 50 wonderful years and more.